The man standing at Russia's podium just said something that should terrify Vladimir Putin. Not an enemy, not NATO, not Ukraine. One of Russia's own political leaders just publicly warned that revolution is coming, and he gave it a deadline. Autumn. If you think that sounds dramatic, wait until you hear what's already happening inside Russia right now. Stay with us, because this story is moving fast, and most people have no idea how deep this goes. Gennady Zuganov, the long-serving leader of Russia's Communist Party, stood before the Russian State Duma, the country's lower parliamentary chamber, and fired a warning that shook the room. Not a whisper, not a suggestion, a deadline. If you, this government, do not urgently adopt financial, economic, and other measures, by autumn, a repeat of what happened in 1917 awaits us. Those words, spoken during a plenary session just months before September's elections, were not the ramblings of a fringe voice. This is a senior political figure inside Russia's own legislature telling the country's leadership that the clock is running out. Now here is where it gets interesting, and where most coverage misses the real story. Zuganov never once directly blamed Putin. Every sentence was carefully worded to point at this government, at the oligarchs, at failing policy. But Putin is the government. Putin built the oligarchic system. Putin launched the war driving the economic collapse. So when Zuganov says the system is broken, he is saying Putin broke it. He just can't say it out loud, because in Putin's Russia, saying it out loud gets people killed. That political tightrope walk tells you everything about how dangerous the mood inside Russia has actually become. And if you want to understand just how close to the edge Russia really is, don't go anywhere, because what's happening to Putin's approval numbers right now changes the entire picture. But first, if you follow this channel, you already know we cover what the headlines bury. Hit subscribe now so you never miss a daily update. Because what's unfolding in Russia right now is not slowing down. So what exactly did 1917 look like, and why does it matter so much that Zuganov invoked it? The Russian Revolution of 1917 wasn't a single event. It was two explosions. The first toppled the imperial government, the second brought the Bolsheviks to power. Both happened against a backdrop that should sound familiar: a catastrophic war bleeding Russia dry, an economy in freefall, a political elite completely disconnected from the people being destroyed by both. Colossal casualties at the front, crushing poverty at home, leaders pointing fingers while the country burned. History doesn't repeat exactly, but sometimes it rhymes so closely it becomes a warning siren. And Zuganov isn't the only one hearing it. On April 10th, just days before his explosive Duma speech, Zuganov made an even blunter appeal directly to Russian voters. If the authorities do not give voters the opportunity to correct the situation with their ballot in September, they will doom the country to defeat. He then laid out what he called Russia's two remaining choices: capitalism plus war, or socialism plus justice. Strip away the political framing, and the message is raw and simple. Russia under Putin is failing, and if nothing changes before the election, the collapse won't be economic. It'll be total. What makes that statement even more alarming is what Zuganov said in March, something that almost nobody in Western media picked up. He warned that Russia itself is becoming a target. Look at Trump's strategy. China is first, we are second, Iran is third. He said Russia would be, quote, ripped apart worse than Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Libya combined. A weakened, economically shattered Russia isn't just vulnerable to internal revolt. It's an open invitation to external pressure, and Putin's war is the reason the door is wide open. Now let's look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie even when leaders do. After war-fueled GDP growth of 4.3% in 2024, Russia's economy began cracking in 2025. Growth slowed to just 1%. Projections for 2026 were revised down to 0.8% before a temporary oil price boost, driven by the crisis in Iran, pushed the IMF to revise figures slightly upward. But that revision is a band-aid on a wound that requires surgery. Russia's central bank interest rate, which sat at 21% as recently as May 2025, has been cut to 14.5% in an attempt to stimulate borrowing and growth. The cuts signal desperation, not confidence. And the inflation risk that comes with aggressive rate cutting is already baked in. The foundation underneath Russia's economy is not just cracked, it is crumbling in ways that Putin cannot paper over with oil revenue alone. Keep watching, because what Ukraine is quietly doing to Russia's oil exports right now is something Putin genuinely cannot afford to have made public. Ukraine has taken matters into its own hands. Rather than allowing Putin to use rising global oil prices as a lifeline, Ukraine has systematically targeted Russia's oil export infrastructure. According to Al Jazeera, Russia's crude oil sales dropped by 300,000 barrels per day in March and April. Refined oil products fell by another 200,000 barrels per day. So even the windfall from higher oil prices is being surgically dismantled. The Financial Times reported Russia was briefly pulling in an extra $150 million per day in oil revenue back in March. But Ukraine's campaign is ensuring that window closes as fast as it opened. And behind that closing window, the structural rot inside Russia's economy is fully exposed. Russia's Economy Development Minister Maxim Reshetnikov said it plainly at an industry conference in April. The reserves that Russia used to cushion its businesses through years of war spending have, in his words, largely been used up. The macroeconomic situation is substantially more difficult, he told conference attendees. The pot is empty. Businesses across Russia are responding accordingly. Russia's central bank surveyed companies nationwide and found that 64% plan to make no new hires in 2026. Beyond that, 14% are actively planning layoffs. Salaries are projected to rise 10 to 15% by year's end, but rising wages mean nothing to workers being pushed out of a shrinking job market. Fewer jobs means more pressure on the Kremlin to fill military ranks. And more military pressure on ordinary Russians means more anger, more fear, and more of exactly the kind of social fuel that ignited 1917. Russia's debt picture adds another layer of alarm. By February of this year, Russia's external debt hit nearly $62 billion, a two-decade high not seen since January 2006. Factor in combined state and private debt, and Russia's central bank reports a 10.4% increase through 2025, bringing total debt to over $319 billion. Putin publicly frames Russia's state debt as one of the lowest in the world relative to GDP. But reserves are gone, debt is rising, businesses are freezing, and the war machine keeps consuming cash that will never come back. The gap between Putin's public framing and Russia's lived reality has never been wider, and that gap is showing up exactly where Putin can least afford it, in what Russian people themselves are saying about him. On April 24th, a poll by the Russian Public Opinion Research Center showed Putin's approval rating had fallen for the seventh consecutive week, from 73.3% at the start of March down to 65.6%, the lowest recorded since the beginning of the Ukraine invasion. And here is the number behind the number. These are Russians being asked inside Russia, under Putin's government, whether they approve of their leader. The ones brave enough to say no are already being counted. How many more are saying yes out of fear? The real approval collapse is almost certainly deeper than any published figure will ever show. 4 years of war, hundreds of thousands dead, an economy that promised prosperity and delivered debt and hiring freezes instead. Whatever surge of nationalist energy Putin captured when he launched the invasion has burned itself out. The fire is cold. The patience is gone. Zuganov knows what comes next. Russia's businesses know. Russia's own ministers know. And Putin, despite the public performance of lecturing officials and blaming everyone around him, knows too. On April 15th, the same day Zuganov issued his revolt warning to the Duma, Putin was behind closed doors scolding Russia's top economic officials, calling the economic contraction intolerable. Not one person in that room had the standing to tell him the truth, that he is the contraction, that the war he chose, the sanctions it invited, the reserves it burned, the lives it consumed, that is the economy he built. History will record it clearly, even if no one in that room could say it. If there is one thing every piece of data in this story points toward, it is this. Russia is not heading toward a crisis. It is already inside one. Zuganov's 1917 warning is not theater. It is a senior political figure inside the system telling anyone willing to listen that the structure is failing from within. The oil patch is temporary. The debt is permanent. The dead don't come back. And approval ratings that fall 7 weeks in a row inside a country where disapproval is dangerous tell a story that no Kremlin statement can rewrite. Putin is running out of time, running out of money, and running out of people willing to pretend everything is fine. We are updating this story daily as new signals emerge from inside Russia. Subscribe below so you get every update the moment it drops. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what's really happening, share it with someone who needs to see past the headlines.